Sustainability, definitely the sector is like really behind in terms of its goals and how it should look at sustainability, because traditionally it's been looked at as it's a checkbox, right? We have to do some reporting. But if there is one sector that can actually make impact on carbon emissions, it's real estate. Like in and of itself, that sector can make a very meaningful change. Innovation also, instead of looking at a green alternative to say a cement or a steel, we also need to look at how we can use our traditional materials which were naturally sustainable. They are locally produced. How can we enforce them to produce buildings of scale that we need today? Decision making in a lot of real estate companies is still very centralized. So it really depends on the vision of the person who's sitting at the helm of the company, which is where adoption of new things tend to be slower.
Hello and welcome to The Shift, powered by ET Edge Insights. It's a series where we talk to industry leaders, policymakers, and experts to delve into key issues changing the world around us. And with me today is Anu Talreja, who's the founder and CEO at Acacia. Anu, welcome to ET Edge Insights.
Thanks for having me, Jagjit.
Anu, it seems to me that the climate and sustainability lens has gone astray in many ways. How do we reroute this, given how much of an imperative it is today?
Yeah, I think what has happened in the world in past 2 years mostly, right? So with the election in US and then a government change followed by a lot of just global unrest politically has kind of triggered semi-economic crisis, also kind of a semi-energy crisis. And of course, especially from a US perspective, there's been a lot of pushback on regulations as they pertain to ESG and sustainability, right? So that has had its ripple effect. But I think in parallel, what has also emerged is people who are really for, investing in sustainability today are the true believers, right? So the true believers are kind of doubling down on that. You can still see there are climate specific funds being raised globally, right? Still they are raising funds. Companies are raising capital. So it's not like, it's completely washed out. The companies who are like really serious about it, they have doubled down. So I think that's one change. The other change is even climate solutions are evolving to not just sell basis the fact that they're climate friendly or they're sustainable. Solutions are becoming deeper to have a strategic advantage for the companies, which is leading to their adoption. Right. So in a way, I think it's good because it's kind of pushed the sector into survival mode and hence innovation, which is where people who have innovated have survived and others haven't.
Right. You spoke about innovation. Let's pick on that.
Okay.
Over your 2 decades of experience in India's real estate sector, what are the key gaps that you found in India's property ecosystem that urgently need innovation to come?
That this can be a 1 hour session in and of itself. See, traditionally, what has happened with real estate globally, not just in India, real estate has been mostly started with like a family, as a family business, right? And then companies have matured into being corporates. So, which is why decision making in a lot of real estate companies is still very centralized. So, it really depends on the vision of the person who's sitting at the helm of the company, right? Which is where adoption of new things tend to be slower. The sector is also, generally considered a conservative sector in terms of mindset. With that background, I think almost everything in real estate is kind of at least 20 years behind where it should be, right? So right from you talk of in real estate companies, just digital adoption from everything from property construction, management, procurement to how they run their operations, how do they do their sales, all of it. Even if you go and buy a house today, it's a terrible customer experience still, right? Like even with the best developer, it's still a very terrible experience. So digital adoption across the real estate value chain is, I think, kind of really, really important. And now there are companies kind of even in Asia doing that, right? So they're going into different segments. Sustainability, definitely the sector is like really behind in terms of its goals. and how it should look at sustainability, because traditionally it's been looked at as it's a checkbox, right? We have to do some reporting. But if there is one sector that can actually make impact on carbon emissions, it's real estate. Like in and of itself, that sector can make a very meaningful change. I think that's the second one. And third one, I think as a consumer, there are a lot of things that are still kind of very backward. So as a consumer, how do we buy real estate, right? It's still kind of very broker led. Brokers are unregulated. The platforms that are there for buying are kind of very traditional listing platforms. They haven't evolved. How do we even finish or construct our homes, right? That process, there are companies like LiveSpace and stuff who have solved that problem for a certain segment of the market, but a large segment of the market kind of still is very fragmented. So I think as the entire industry, both from a lens as well as consumer lens, is kind of really, up for innovation. But
Lots of moving parts.
Lots of moving parts. But it's also you have worked in
Right.
one such piece of the value chain. But it's a difficult sector to build in, just because high value, you need high trust. Industry itself is like very conservative, slow to adopt new solutions, right? So it's a difficult sector to build something in. You need a big, big heart to be able to build in this. Yeah.
Right. Now there's this need, Anu, of a verticalized approach to decarbonization in real estate. In practical terms, what have you learned about the unique carbon challenges that India's built environment has as compared to markets that are far more mature?
Yes, so one very typical challenge that most Western companies are solving for, seeing carbon emissions in building, majority of the emissions are coming from energy consumption. And of energy consumption in a building, almost 60% of energy is HVAC, your heating and cooling systems, right? So when you talk of Western countries, most of the innovation is actually coming in heating solutions,
Okay.
which are not very relevant to the Asian climate as such. Right. So we do need an Asia first approach to kind of look at how do we drive energy efficiency by focusing more on air conditioning. So that is one clear area. Second, when it comes to India specifically, if you see traditionally our architecture, has been very, in architecture terms, we call it vernacular.
Yeah.
Vernacular
Right.
basically means you're using local techniques, local materials, and local construction technology, right? Which somewhere in the process we have kind of left behind in the era of scale and industrialization. So I think innovation also, instead of looking at a green alternative to say a cement or a steel, we also need to look at how we can use our traditional materials which were naturally sustainable. They are locally produced. How can we enforce them to produce buildings of scale that we need today, which I think is an area where not a whole lot of work is happening. So that's, I think, the two unique challenges and approaches that are required for India as such.
Interesting. Now, given your vast experience of work, you have worked with global investors, you've worked with local developers. How ready do you think India is when it comes to sort of meeting that net zero commitment? Are there any major pushbacks there?
I think our government is kind of doing a lot to support at least energy reliance, self-reliance, be it adoption of solar through various schemes or EV through various schemes and now biofuels, right? So
Right.
the government is constantly investing in those schemes, which is where you can see that solar adoption in India today is kind of very decent, right?
Picking up.
It's picking up pace, and it's also reached a certain scale. Today, we have more capacity than consumption in terms of solar, right?
Right.
So the government is doing its piece, but I think from a private sector perspective, typically what happens is the private sector is typically bottom line focused, right? So
True.
unless a technology has evolved to a stage where it can drive bottom line impact for them, a positive impact, private sector would be slow to
Right.
kind of adopt, and even if they do, it'll be more on the pilot and testing basis. If you want to push mass adoption, it has to be cost efficient, right? So I think that's what, with government incentives, kind of help push that scale so that a technology then becomes affordable,
Yeah.
so that it can be mass adopted, right? Typically that's how innovation cycle would work. So
True.
in solar we have seen that has happened.
Mhm.
In EV we are currently witnessing that wave. Solar is now, people want to put solar not because they're getting incentives. Even when they're not getting incentives, people want to put solar because
There's a
it's
willingness
cost
there.
efficient,
Absolutely.
right? It helps them save. The return on investment is very quick. Compared to EV, we are seeing that phase right now, right? In biofuels, for example, that phase we'll see over next 2 to 3 years. So it has to be a mix of government push and followed by adoption by the private players, right? And then international investors can be a catalyst, right? So some investors like an IFC, right, or CPPIB, or these guys are kind of coming up with new funds where they are investing in green technologies or
Right.
green construction and stuff. So those things provide an additional incentive. But initially, any innovation has to be incentivized for it to be adopted at scale, be produced at scale so that it
True.
becomes effective. So that's, I think, the phase we are in. I think it's part of evolution. And in next 5 years, we'll see a very different phase. I'm optimistic about it.
So you spoke about green technology and green construction. How do we build green? How do we build net zero today in India?
It's a see, building, when you're constructing a building, there are many moving pieces, right? I think when I speak to developers, my approach is, if I, as an invested party who wants to see sustainable construction, I try and speak the language that they understand, right? So I don't say that you adopt like a more expensive alternative to, say, cement, which is big cost for you, right? So cement is like 20-30% of total project cost.
True.
Even if there is a 1% difference in you buying a 1% more expensive variant, it becomes a big difference to your overall project cost, right? So what we try and emphasize is, one, on very small material changes, right, which are not kind of like really impacting your overall project cost. There are also now a lot of recycled materials which are actually lower in cost, right? So they become more cost efficient. Second, a lot of emphasis on design so that what you're constructing today, 10 years, 20, 30 years later, it kind of stays at least energy and water efficient,
Right.
because the building is going to stay through its lifetime. And three, how do you construct, right? The construction process itself can be highly optimized, right? You because that transportation and energy consumption that happens during construction process itself, there's a lot of room for improvement without actually adding a lot to your cost, right? So now you're increasingly seeing solar being used for construction processes as well, right? Like at least if not the heavy machinery, at least the mid to small scale kind of energy requirements can be done by solar. How do you kind of protect your physical environment when construction activity is going on, because that's causing a lot of air pollution, right? How do you contain that? How do you use recycle water on site to kind of use that, right? So small changes, start with that. Once you see impact, then kind of invest more, is kind of the incremental approach is what I sort of try to propagate. And that's where we are helping a lot of developers to sort of move towards that.
Right, right. Now, Anu, you have scaled two startups in sectors that are traditionally not known to be tech first. In your experience, what has experience taught you when it comes to building, investor trust?
What I have seen is that investors respect where your difficulties lie. You can sit in front of an investor and present a very grand vision. That's important. That's non-negotiable. But at the same time, I think understanding where the blind spots or where difficulties lie, being able to anticipate those, is something that really builds up investor confidence and trust, right? So, especially in sectors like this, the fact that you can be real about how growth would be, what kind of challenges you'll face during adoption, if you are able to articulate those and have some sense of how you're going to solve for that. You may not be able to solve for everything. Like if real estate companies are slow moving, I can't change that, right? But I can be innovative in how I sell my product. Maybe I can come up with a smaller version which doesn't require a whole series of approvals, right?
True.
That can help them taste it, and then they become invested, right? So
Mhm.
so what investors really, what would inspire trust is, one, coming from the sector, you understand the psychology, and basis that you are able to anticipate what problems or roadblocks you'll see along the way and how you plan to mitigate them. I may say something today, but when I'm actually hit with that situation, I may adapt that. But the fact that you are able to think through those and anticipate those is what I think inspires most trust with investors.
Right. Interesting. As a founder who's worked and continues to work at the intersection of real estate, technology, and sustainability, how do you balance commercial pressures of clients, something which the real estate industry is known for? Let's put it that way. And
That's very eloquently put.
compare, balancing that with the climate goal.
The good thing is with what I'm doing today is that I don't need to define the purpose for the sake of defining purpose. My company itself is the purpose, right? So if my company exists because we are trying to solve for climate change, then every sale that we make is kind of taking us closer to the bigger goal of mitigating climate change, right? So it's kind of inbuilt in the purpose and the DNA of the company. So for us, the business goals and the climate goals kind of entirely align, right? That's the nature of the business. But having built in this sector before, the question that you're asking, it's really hard. And typically climate goals or even CSR, ESG goals kind of tend to get overlooked. But end of the day, it boils down to the vision of the person who's sitting at the helm, right? I worked with Marriott. Mr. Marriott used to say that typically service companies say that we are a customer first company, right? But Mr. Marriott used to say that I'll take care of my employees and my employees will take care of my customers, right? And it comes from, the vision comes from the top, because and I can say that having worked in that company, I've seen that vision kind of play out, right? It's one of the best places to work. I think the person who's sitting at the helm kind of needs to figure out what their vision is. Are you just selling brick, mortar, cement, steel structures, or are you selling spaces where people are going to live? So that has to come from the
There's
top.
a difference in perception.
There's
there.
a difference in perception, right? And it's just perception, and that kind of defines your entire culture. So it has to come from the top.
Interesting. Now, looking ahead in India's climate tech startup ecosystem, do you believe there is that one single biggest gap there that leaders must urgently fix so that we have more and more homegrown climate change unicorns coming through? Is it funding? Is it talent? Is it policy? Where does that gap lie?
I don't think it's a funding challenge, honestly. I think there's enough capital that's available in the market. I think the real challenge is today in climate in India and even Asia for that matter, you are seeing two kinds of founders or two kinds of companies. One who are completely innovation driven and they are, kind of very technical scientist kind of people, right? With no commercial sort of understanding of how the product would be distributed, adopted, or even expertise to kind of lead that. And there's very fantastic innovation that's happening, right? On the other hand, there are founders who are completely commercial and have no technical background, right? We are not getting a lot of founders who are a mix of both. That's where magic happens, was then you can combine innovation with commerce. And that's where you start creating a large company rather than either creating a product or creating a business, right? So I think that is the biggest gap that I am seeing in the ecosystem today.
This conversation has been super insightful. It's been very important, and I'm sure it's going to go on and add to the other important conversations going out.
Thank you for having me. It was
Thank you
lovely
so much
speaking with you.
for taking out the time for this.